Hey, it's Joey Balladonna here from Anthrax, and this is SAGAS.
Well,
Look, this is a big one.
I didn't break out and join the podcast today.
It is now time for Devil's Advocate. Same time, same place, awesome.
What's going on, everybody? This is Corbin, the Serpent Tongue Skipwith.
And this is Ren, the Berserker Marabou. And this is
SAGAS.
SAGAS. Welcome.
Welcome to episode 30.
Episode 30.
It should
COVID
be.
edition.
Yeah, again. COVID. So if I sound a bit fucked, I'm on the back end of COVID. I'm going back to work tomorrow. I should be negative today anyway, but I've been going through COVID. Thankfully, unlike Ren, it was the last few days, not the first few days. So I should sound a bit better, hopefully. Just keep that in mind if I'm coughing or sounding like death. Episode number 30, I think. And this album was chosen by our good friends Expedition last week. Go check out, this is actually next week's recording, but if you haven't checked that out already, go check out their episode. We talked about their debut album. It will be on Spotify and obviously all the normal places. Good host. It was a very crowded one, but exciting nonetheless. We had 6 people on 7, us 2 and 5. Either way, First time having that many people on. It was a good party to have. Shout out to them. So today we'll be talking about the 4th album by the band that needs no introduction at this point, Metallica. And if it's not obvious already, we're talking about And Justice for All. Their 4th album coming out in 1988. I wasn't even born yet.
Neither was I.
I hardly believe it. All right. So, did you want to give your first opinions or me?
Yeah, I mean, like the minute the boys said Metallica, I kind of guessed it was either going to be, Megadeth or Metallica or something around that era. So I was so glad that they picked some of the earlier stuff from Metallica. I was expecting something a bit more recent. So happy days when they said On Justice for All, I was like, well done, boys. Because it was always one of my favorites. I always found it very intriguing. There's a lot behind this album, a lot of drama or, interesting facts, let's say, we'll put it mildly, about this album. But I loved it, and I always loved it. And it was so nice to go back and revisit it because I haven't listened to it for a number of years. And, obviously you hear the tracks as you go about because some of the songs are absolutely enormous. But it's nice to just sit back and listen to the whole album again. Lovely feeling of nostalgia, even though I wasn't born when it was out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's me for my my first thoughts of it again.
Someone who's obviously well versed in metal or music in general. Obviously, it would be a sacrilege not to hear this album over my ears already by this point. It's not like this is the first time me discovering this album, but I remember when I was doing the research, or should I say the listening for this album, it made me think like a constant deja vu memory I always had was how come this album, I always like, so every time I listen to this album, I think, how come I don't listen to this more? Like I think about it, I'm like, I have insane memories of albums like Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, obviously, Death Magnetic. Yes, I love that album. Shoot me if you want. All those albums I have fond replays of, but this album I don't have much replay memory of, and I always think why. And every time I listen to the album, I remember why. To me, look, and I can't do it any other way but bluntly. To me, this album, although has obviously a lot of amazing moments, I feel it's way too long. And I was thinking about it, and upon research, I was doing the study for it. So Ride the Lightning, which is my personal favorite Metallica album, comes in at 47 minutes and 25 seconds. Master of Puppets, 54 minutes and 47 seconds. And this album comes at 65 minutes and 25 seconds. That is an hour and 5 minutes and 24 seconds. I don't know. To me, this just feels like not a weird attempt, but an attempt from Metallica to kind of push what Master of Puppets did, and then make it a bit more a fusion of thrash and prog, in my opinion, because it's so many of the tracks are so long, and Justice for All, the title track, is like 9 minutes longer than that, isn't it? Like nine 9 minutes and 41 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you have a 9 minute 49 seconds in To Live Is to Die. You know, there's so many long songs, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 6 minutes. I just felt like maybe this isn't Metallica's forte, long tracks. You know, there are some bands that can pull it off better than others. And I'll be saying this exact criticism if Anthrax tried it, if Slayer tried it, you know, if any I just think for thrash, it's not that good to have both thrash sounds and longish sounds. You know, obviously, like the song One, for example, it's classic. It's, you know, it's long, but it has that punch to it. It has that classic feel to it because it is a classic song. But I just think for most of the album, the tracks are just too fleshed out for me. And, you know, I understand they were taking that different route with the politics and the deep lyricism about war crimes and all that. But I just felt like if they had just toned it down lengthwise, it would have been that much more of a classic and legendary experience for me personally.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because they Lars even said himself that they squeezed 6 riffs into every song, and then they decided to add 2 more. You know, so they really milked this album. The tracks, you know, they are very long, and yeah, it is weird. They kind of try to go that proggy route, like, you know, and try and, you know, it was just riff upon riff upon riff. You know, it was like you said, it was their 4th album, 1988, Elektra Records, and they had loads of offers after this though, to, you know, like $1 million record deals to come over and sign with English labels and stuff. But the interesting thing for me about this album is the first Jason Newsted album that he recorded. God love him, he may as well have not even turned up for the sessions, because there's all that controversy about the bass. It's basically it's inaudible. Anybody who hasn't listened to it, it's very hard to hear. Even though it's been remastered, they chose to keep the bass down. And there's all this controversy about, you know, why it happened. And basically the engineers, well, it was produced by James and Lars, obviously, along with Fleming Rasmussen, and he's a Danish producer. Super cool dude. I'll talk about him later on, but he's worked with a lot of my favorite bands nowadays. But back in the day, he'd worked with like Rainbow and a few other big artists. And he's a really professional, really great producer. His engineering skills are, you know, top notch. But then it got handed over to be mixed and mastered by another bunch of boys, Steve Thompson and Michael Bardiro. And they chose a very unusual method to to mixing this. They went very dry with it. It's very dry, which was very unlike what they were going for from the other albums. But yeah, the interesting thing is that the bass was pulled out, and the boys were getting the blame for it with the mix. But it was actually Lars and James decided it wasn't. I don't think it was anything out of malice towards Jason, which it seemed like it, you know. But I think it was only until like 2018 or 2019, just after the 30-year anniversary of it, the James and Lars said, no, our ears were just fried or shot from all the touring and stuff. So we were making everything else louder, you know, guitar wise and vocals, because we couldn't hear it. And the bass was just getting lost. And in a way, when I heard that, I listened to it again and it made sense because the drums are quite low in a way too. Like, and obviously starting off in the mix, the drums are going to be pushed to the max when it comes to Lars. So if the guitars are pushed, you can hear the guitars are a little bit loud for me anyway. And so that kind of makes sense, but I think it might be just a cop out. I don't know. Like, like but there is little or no bass on Jason Newsted's very first, you know, and apparently they're really good bass lines as well. There was and he recorded them separately, and the assistant engineer, I forget his name now, but he was the only guy. Him and Fleming were the only two that heard the bass lines, and he said Fleming said they were brilliant. So we'll never know.
Exactly. You know, for all the hate, not hate, but for all the criticism I give this album, I don't blame their direction of it. I mean, you know, going back to, like I said, my favorite, Ride the Lightning, what's the very end track? The Call of Cthulhu. And that's 8 minutes and 55 seconds, unlike any song on that album. And then you have Master of Puppets, with the song Master of Puppets being 8 minutes and 34 seconds. So I understand the progression, you know. It's like, I guess they were trying to, I guess they thought, you know, they had it in them to make a whole record of songs of that length, of that caliber. And, you know, like, it was in their right to do so, you know. Obviously, it's got critically acclaimed. Tons of people love it. It's got very fond memories for most. It's just, for me, when I hear the odd track, the odd long track on the other albums, you know, it stands out because it's the only one. It's like, I'm like, oh, cool, Master Puppets, fuck yeah. And then I can enjoy the rest being shorter and more, not more enjoyable, but more listenable because they're shorter, more contained. You know, and like the Call of Cthulhu is like the perfect way to end that album because it's a banger, a long banger of a track. Perfect outro for the album because it's so long. It's distinctive. It's the only song of that length on the album. The rest of the album was pretty short, considerably considering. So I think when you do it I mean, for some bands, I think for thrash specifically, it's best. I mean, obviously I'm no artist, so I can't really talk. But for me, I think for the listening experience, it's better to have small amounts of longer tracks, you know, and then have the rest contained so that they stand out more and, you know, create a bigger impact. But when each song is that length, it's like, to me, song can be lost very quickly, you know, and like as I said earlier, genres like prog, they have no problem doing this. They can have 20-minute songs at a time and no one bats an eye because that's what they're used to. That's their thing, you know. They create stories and conceptual vibes and all this stuff, and they need those long songs to do so. Or post rock is very famous for this too, and that makes sense. But in a genre of fast paced thrash, to me it's almost smarter to go the punk route of short, sprout, fast, smaller songs than it is longer ones. I mean, obviously that's just my preference, but yeah, when I was listening to this, I found it hard to stay engaged as much as the other albums because every song was so long, and I just don't think it's the right fit for Metallica's MO per se to have so many long tracks on one album.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean I was thinking when you said that at the start about thrash being, you know, with long songs and thrash, that doesn't really make sense. The first thing I thought was punk. I mean, you wouldn't have a 10-15 minute long punk song. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a band that does that successfully out there, but I've not heard it. And, you know, as soon as I hear punk, I think of like 2-minute songs or just under or just over. And yeah, for like thrash, it's the same vibe, I think, because it's that aggressive, fast paced stuff. But it's crazy because, like, it is a very, like you said, it's very acclaimed album by the critics. You know, they describe it as very complex, especially for, you know, 1988. Very deep, or a lot of depth in it. Very complex, musically and lyrically. It's a really, really great album. I think the only main criticisms it really got was what I hit on was the dry mix and the lack of bass, which is crazy. But like, I'm gonna try not talk about this too much because I just every time I think of this album, that's all I can think about. You know, it kind of like they tried to take the bass out of it, but that's all you can think about is the bass that you can't hear. It's like it's crazy. But what you call it? Yeah. So I mean, it was nominated for Grammys. It didn't win. best album, or I don't think. I think Jethro Tull, which is so weird that it was like best hard rock or something. Jethro Tull beat the boys to the Grammy, right? But they did then, after the album was released, they released 3 singles, and the third single was after the album with the video for one, and then that won a Grammy. So I think that was their first Grammy, like in 1990, and then sure it was certified platinum, 8 million copies in 2018. So that was the 30-year anniversary, 8 mil copies, and now we can get it on all sorts of bonus tracks and great footage and stuff. So for an album to still be selling whopper amounts for that length of time, but it's interesting because I mean, anything you'll say about this, you're not gonna. I suppose I was gonna say I was gonna start talking with Saint Anger, and I was like, what do we think of with Saint Anger? It's like the snare. There's always one thing about a Metallica album that really stands out, like it's almost like as if they do it on purpose. It's like a little trick that they know that the rest of us don't know. But yeah, overall it is a brilliant album. It's funny because there was loads of things surrounding this album. Like it was delayed because James injured himself skateboarding. He injured his arm. Could you imagine James Hetfield going out skateboarding? Like yeah, it's just some of the Steve Thompson tried to pull out of the project because of all this grief with the bass, and the management wouldn't let him, so he ended up doing it. But this idea of it being a dry mix, it gets an awful lot of hate, but I kind of like it. It's I'm more of an ambient, especially when I'm working myself. I like an ambient sound. I like it quite wet sound, and especially on vocals. And I get a lot of stick for that because people want your vocals a little bit drier, and I prefer to create more of an atmosphere. And especially with metal, I think you can really, really bring out that huge wall of sound. And it's weird because Jason Newsted, when he was in Flotsam and Jetsam, that's what he described them as, like a wall of sound, like this, like overbearing sound wall. And then he's in this band, and it's he gets whipped right down, and there's a dry mix, and it's all strange. But yeah, I don't know. I just, when it comes to the mixing element of this album, I think it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I will never know the real answers, I don't think, but it's fascinating. Like,
Doesn't anyone find it ironic that Metallica's first Grammy was one? Their one Grammy. Well, not their one Grammy, but their first Grammy was one. And it's interesting. You talked about how on every Metallica album, there's something distinctive. You can, and Justice for All, No Bass, Ride the Lightning, arguably, at least to me, their most thrashier album of them all, which is why it's my favorite. Zulu, there's no band at all. It's just no. Lulu, there's no band at all.
Yeah.
Band. No. But yeah, no. It like I said, I can't really. All I can do is, from my perspective, look at it from a critic's perspective, and it's not a bad album. It's just so much to like. I think we were talking about this ages ago, like in the same breath, how it's not, or to me, it's not ideal to have a long-winded Iron Maiden album. It's also not, to me, not a good idea to have a long-winded Metallica album, because it's just like, that's not what, for me, that's not what I want. That's not what I fell in love with this band. And obviously songs like Master of Puppets or One, or even All Nightmare Long, which is a track I love, all very long, amazing tracks. But because normally they pull it off individually, separate from the rest of the album, it makes it stand out. It makes it more memorable. But I don't know. I have to be honest and say that I found a hard time, paying attention to the whole album from start to finish because it was just so long. But obviously, there are things you can point out, like the lyricism shifts from politics and war, and a lot more gritty compared to their other stuff. And I think that was a very obviously bold and very brave decision by the band. It's just like it's funny. It's like the whole band they must have been thinking, what's important? Politics, war. You know what's not important? Bass. Fuck it. But war, politics. No. I'm sure that's not what they thought. But it is interesting because you listen to songs like One and how gruesome the storytelling is on that. And I'm pretty and you could tell there was a shift because the other bands from that time, 1988, thrash, like Slayer talking about their normal stuff, Satan and Antichrist shit. Anthrax, actually Anthrax was the more conscious one lyrically that before Metallica. But I mean, besides Anthrax, you got Pantera, you got all these other bands that didn't really hit as gritty lyrically as the topics brought up on And Justice for All. And the cover art, although mine's a bit zoomed in, it's it's very surreal with the judge bitch, whatever her name is, broken up and the fucking scales are broken and she's blindfolded, I'm pretty sure. All that stuff. It's just like not only are they presenting the harsh lyricism, but they're also the imagery and and even the title of the album and how it has ... and Justice for All, and then it has so it's just like they really wanted to make a conscious impact, and I'm not sure if they did it as maybe as well as Anthrax do, but they did an amazing effort, and I'm pretty sure this album lyrically and sonically, unfortunately for the bass, changed the tides of metal to come. And as no matter my criticisms on this album compared to their other work, you can't take that away from them. So,
well, that's it. I mean, like, when I sit down and listen to Metallica, they're probably one of the bands that I criticize most, and it's only because they have done so many amazing things for metal and for music in general. Even my sister the other day, who doesn't listen to metal, she was chatting to me. We were just having like a random conversation, and she said like, "Oh, I heard like Metallica are like the third highest paid band of all time," and I was like, "Yeah, you see, like the power of metal, like it's really cool to hear stuff like that." I mean, I can sit back and say like, "Ah, this album should be called dot 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 and and fade ins for all," because every track, well, not every track, but a lot of tracks fade in. It's like a really strange. I mean, I understand that on the first track, but then they do it again and again. There's fade ins, fade outs. It's full of fade ins. So that's my pun joke on that. Or I also say it could be called, and so and no bass for all. So like you could come up with the puns all day, but there is it's a very powerful album, like you said, lyrically and visually with the artwork. And the artwork was made by a chap called Roger Gorman. He was the illustrator. It was James and Lars's idea to have Lady Justice. I think she's something to do with the American Constitution or one of those. What was it called again? It was the Pledge of Allegiance. It was like the last 3 or 4 words at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance. We're not. I don't know anything about American politics or anything. Being sitting here in Ireland, like only what we get on Sky News. But yeah, apparently that's the. So it's quite a strong, especially if you were an American listening to this. That would be a very strong title. And it was well presented, like it definitely made the impression that it was meant to make. But sorry, when you were talking at the start, I got distracted there because I got handed this. They just arrived in the post. It's nothing to do with Metallica. I don't know if you can see it.
It's not upside down. No.
Is it upside down?
Is it?
Probably is. I can't see. Oh, it is upside down. There you go.
Nice.
How about now?
Narcissism at its finest.
New flags just arrived. So sorry, I thought I'd drop that in there. But I swear it was handed to me. I didn't just bring that up. But yeah, so an album, you know, with songs like Blackened on it. You know, Blackened is just one of those iconic tracks, and it's just like you know, straight off the bat, a song fading in and kicking into that, it's just killer, you know. So when you can pick out a number of tracks, you know, and Justice for All, one, there's huge tracks on this album. Um, uh, did you did you get a chance to listen? I never really sit down to compare, you know, remasters to the old, but you can always just hear a little bit of difference. There wasn't that much difference on this one, mind, because there's still no fucking bass, like you know, like, and you know what like James said? He said, the reason why is because everything is of its time, and we, you know, we don't want to take away from what made it. Like I said about the snare, like if they remastered Saint Anger, I don't know if they have already, but if they do, they'll probably leave the snare where it is, like, and everybody be screaming, "No, take it out!" But you know, the cool thing I like about Fleming is just to hit on some of the bands that I like and guys that we've spoken to. Like he's worked with Blind Guardian, Interferum, one of my favorite bands from Finland, and our buddy Michael from Artillery. They worked on By Inheritance. He worked on that record with them, and Ride the Lightning. So like, he's had some, like, you know, serious chops behind him. And when he was recording this album, he wanted a certain direction. He wanted it to give that Ride the Lightning kind of vibe. But yeah, the boys, I think they were a little bit intimidated by James and Lars, as you would, like, you know, and they probably didn't know them that well. So they pretty much just done what they told them to, you know, because you look at the credits, James takes credits for the producing stuff as well, like, and you know, I could only imagine him sitting there going, "No, I want this, I want that," and him at the height of his fame and his bravado and stuff, you know, his drinking and just coming off a big tour and stuff, you know. So, you know, you can excuse the boys a little bit, like, but you know, I still would love to hear these tracks. I'm sure there's somebody on YouTube that has added bass lines to these tracks. I'd love to hear them, but you won't actually hear the nuances that Jason will bring, because he was very underrated. I know he was coming in after Cliff. Cliff was only died 2 years before this record, and it would have been a year had James not delayed. There was other delays as well. I think they wanted Fleming, and Fleming couldn't work with them. Then they picked another producer, and he wasn't able to do it either. But it was in a. It's funny. The studio was called One on One Studios. So I always have this theory that did that inspire the title track One, or the track One. You know, uh, probably just a coincidence, but like I always, you know, I listen to albums like this, and I always have so many bloody questions. Like, you know, I'll never get the fucking answer. But you know, that studio as well has there's been a lot of really cool people pass through that studio. Like Kiss recorded Psycho Circus there as well, which is probably my favorite Kiss album. And later on, the studio got like bought out and re-owned and branded. And Dirt, Alice in Chains was recorded there. So, you know, I think it's went from one on one to Ecstasy Studios. So it's still there running strong, I think. So yeah, it's just incredible. Like there's a DVD called "And Camcorders for All," or I wouldn't call it a DVD. It's like a home video from the boys back in the day, and it's mainly just them live. But there's a few little bits and pieces backstage, and you can kind of see a little bit more I don't know, human side to them a little bit. You know, they're a little, because they're younger, they're a bit more uh excitable, let's say. Like Lars was backstage after the tour, and he was pulling through these cases of like riders, you know, the big riders for bands, and he was like, "Oh, Def Leppard's rider, oh, score, I'm keeping that." And they're all slagging him, going, "He's like a fucking magpie, like he keeps he just wants to." And I can imagine myself doing the same, like, because I love you know, collecting little things, like memories of things. Like I'll be the same on this Vader tour now. I'll be I'll be getting all plectrums and fucking drumsticks and the whole lot, like. But yeah, and it's nice to see that because when you think of Lars Ulrich, you just think of this, you know, uber outrageous, confident, like just Mr. Man, basically in metal, like, you know. But speaking of Lars, his performance on this record was pretty good, I have to say. You know, it would be interesting to hear it on it would mix differently because basically they used what makes it dry is they used the close mics. So when they were recording the drums, they only used the close mics, and the room mics that they recorded with were left out. So they only mixed with the closed mics, which is very unusual, especially at the time, because the 80s was all about that big room, you know, and that big reverberated snares that is very common in the 80s. Like, but I don't know, maybe they were pushing towards the 90s, which is really interesting because 2 years later, you know, the 90s came about, you know, and they were very interesting. It was this is the last album of the 80s, as far as I know, anyway, of Metallica. And it was an interesting one to end the era on, you know what I mean? So that's me.
Yeah.
No.
All right, so with that, we're going into our sponsorship segment, and today we just want to give a spotlight shout out to a new sponsor, Viking Trinkets. So this was actually someone we acquired last week, I'm pretty sure, and I couldn't be more happy that they're with us. So if I am if I have my information correct, they are out of New Zealand. I'm born from New Zealand, so be happy, and they make some of the sickest Viking trinkets, as the name would imply, that I've seen. And, you know, as soon as I saw this stuff, I had to reach out to them, and, you know, I haven't regretted it since. So if you go search up Viking Trinkets on all social media platforms, you will find some of the coolest things, from shirts to rings to bracelets, necklaces. They have literally everything, and all of it looks amazing. Me and Ren, because Ren is an unoriginal fuck. He chose the same thing as me, but we both chosen the this necklace of Major, I'm pretty sure the hammer, Thor's hammer, if I'm not mistaken. It looks pretty sick. It's like hangs down here. We can't wait to get it. When it comes, we're obviously going to show it and wear it on SAGAS, and he'll be wearing it on tour. But it's exciting. They have so much new stuff. We can't wait to buy more from them. And if you want to purchase any of this stuff yourself, then feel free to what's the information, Ren, for the code?
Yes, it's SMP, so Saga's Metal Podcast 10. It's all capitals.
Yep.
And then 10.
Nice. Yep. So check that out, and then you'll get 10% off your first order, or any order, I think. Any order.
Yeah.
And make sure you get it with us, so that we can get more. You know, we can help them get more popular. They can help us get more popular, and then we can help you guys get better deals and all this stuff. Because trust me, it is all amazing and good quality stuff. We're gonna prove it to you by wearing it all the time on SAGAS. And if it's something that he can wear on the tour, you know it's good quality. He wouldn't wear it otherwise, so it's gonna be good. You'll be seeing it hopefully by next episode. Us wearing it. So yeah, watch out for that. Viking Trinkets. Go on all social media, Facebook, Instagram. I'm sure they have Twitter. Go message them, tell them, you know, talk to them if you want. They're nice guys. They respond pretty quickly to send them the love and tell them that the SAGAS Middle podcast sent you.
Yeah.
And
nice.
That leads us to a very special segment, the none other than
Devil's Advocate. Wow.
One day we're gonna make that like a full song. It's gonna be sick. It's gonna be sick. So as always, I start this because the serpent tongue has to go first, I suppose. So I'll talk about best track, and for me, from the very start, there's only been two choices: Blackened and One. I mean, One is an obvious one. One is an obvious one. Anyway, it's an obvious choice because it's a badass song. The themes are nitty gritty. That sick as build up and fucking like in the middle of it. It's fucking sick. It was one of the hardest songs to play on Guitar Hero. I remember that back in the day. Like trying to keep up with that. So, amazing track. And Blackened, as Ren pointed out earlier on, fantastic track. And it's the perfect intro track for this album. And I love the grooves of it. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, you can't go wrong with that perfect track. So between the two, I'll probably have to go with one just because I've had more time to enjoy that song from Guitar Hero to my teens. I discovered this album a bit later in my young adult years. So, but if I discovered them both at the same time, it would be a lot harder. So, but for me, one, but obviously Blackened would be my next if I had to. And for me, the worst track, it might be surprising to some, but for me, it's the title track and Justice for All. It only because it's so long. Like to me, the length, and obviously, as I keep saying, long songs can be justified. Believe it or not, I listen to a band called Swans, which we're going to cover one day. Can't wait when that day comes. But they have a song that's 35 minutes in length, and I listen to that from start to finish. Like I have no problem with that because of how they do it. But for Metallica, I just don't think there's justification for a song that long. To me, it doesn't go. The build up and the hype, it doesn't lead to something that's worth this long. And I think even the song like Blackened accomplishes more in the 6 minutes and 42 seconds than that song does in the almost 10 minutes. So yeah, to me it's just too long. It didn't go the way I wanted it. It didn't go where I wanted it for the time span it was. So unfortunately for me, and Justice for All, there was no justice for me.
Jez. Well, I'm 50-50 with you on this one because I start off with the least favorite, but yeah, it's funny. Like Injustice for All for me was kind of like a contender for one of my favorites over the years, But when I listen back to it now again with the rest of the album, I kind of I it got pegged at the post, but I think the part of that song that really stands out for me is pretty cool is the minor key change where he's like the ultimate in vanity, exploiting their supremacy. I can't handle the things you say. I can't believe the price you pay. Like that's pretty cool. And then there is the bitchin' solo. Like it's there's a couple of tracks on this album. I wanted to say a bit more about To Live Is to Die because it's really just Kirk on that song. It should be called Let Kirk Shine, To live is to let Kirk shine because like the lead guitar stuff in that song is excellent. And he does quite a lot of good stuff on Justice for All. But you can't give a song the best song on the album because one lad does a great performance. So yeah, I can see what you're saying with that one. Now, my favorite song is One as well because it's an iconic song. It's even when I'm sure when the minute the song came out, it felt like a classic. It's like it's full of emotion. There's everything that you could possibly want in a song. There's the lovely clean, there's the huge chorus, and lyrically it's very it's heartbreaking almost because as far as I pick it up, it's like a soldier, the afterlife of a war, of like the atrocities of war, and PTSD and stuff like it's some dark deep stuff like and I feel for anybody that has to go through that. But then this song has, like you said, the best bridge ever. That I love it. Like I cannot get enough of that. If that was my alarm clock in the morning, I'd be just straight up out of bed, not a bother. Like it's just excellent, and it was the first double bass drum part I ever learned as well. Actually, I owe a lot to Metallica for things I picked up, like the hand tapping that was displayed in this album was another thing that got me into hand tapping on the guitar, and the double bass drumming on this, that particular part especially, it just yeah, it just awoke a huge musical doorway for me. So yeah, it's my favorite song without a doubt. Probably one of my favorite Metallica songs overall, actually. So that brings me to my least favorite song, and I was him and Han about this as well. There was another one I was thinking of. But actually, before I go on to this, I just want to say The Shorter Straw is a really good track as well. The chorus of Harvester of Sorrow is brilliant, but the rest of the song didn't really do a huge amount for me. But the Shorter Straw, brilliant. There's one little interesting bit in that track actually. Um, that really highlights the lack of pace. There's like this bitching solo, and there's like the stabby guitar stop stuff, and then the drum stop, and it's dead air, and I can imagine there's a bass line going for a walk under there. It just really, really points it out. I just wanted to say that. Okay, so this song is the number 9, Dyer's Eve, has to be my least favorite. It's the first minute and 16 seconds. It's a riff fest. It's pretty cool, but then it doesn't really. It's a very it's full on thrash, let's say, but there's not enough depth in the track for me compared to the rest of the songs for it to be an album closer. I don't think it was a good move. Um, but then again, there's some really nice Kirk goodness, wah wah tastiness in there, like so it's got some good elements in it too, like so that's it for me, really. Like, the frayed ends of sanity is just another classic song. I love it. I could relate to it in a time. So yeah, there you go. So I'm 50-50 with you this week, bro.
Nice.
I think.
I was just about to say, before we end up or before we announce next week, someone who I think deserves something, someone who, even though was not directly involved in the music scene, someone who inspired every single person. So anyone who has any kind of passion for music was inspired by this person, and anyone who says they weren't are a lying full of shit. And I have to say, rest in peace to Olivia Newton-John. If you're gonna sit here and say that you didn't like the Grease soundtrack, you're fucking lying, because that is the best soundtrack of all time. Fuck you if you think it's not. And yeah, so she passed away, I think 2 days ago, 74, 73, from cancer. Obviously Grease is the best what's the word? Musical movie ever made. So yeah, rest in peace to her, and for all she did for music, even though she wasn't actually an artist. She did more than most bands or artists would do in their lifetime for the art of music. So rest in peace to her, and obviously to all her family and everyone who loved and appreciated her. So.
Bro, that's interesting that you say that, because I don't even know if I actually ever said this to anybody else. I don't think I said it to you, but that Grease album was the very first album when I was a kid that I sang to. It was kind of where I started singing, listening to that soundtrack. As crazy as it sounds, it's a huge yeah, man, that's interesting that you brought that up. Like that's crazy. Like, but yeah, rest in peace, Olivia. That's very sad news.
Did you ever watch Grease 2? I've always been too scared to watch it.
Yeah, no, I've heard it's just terrible. Like, so I couldn't bring myself to do it. Like,
it's funny because like me and Courtney were watching it the first 10 minutes of it yesterday. Because there's one bit that I remember of Grease 1, and I can never get it in my head. It's at the very start, right after the intro, when all the 40-year-olds, they don't even look like teenagers. Like all the 40-year-olds are going to a meeting back at school, and there's that scene where John Travolta turns around and he has a cigarette in his mouth. And then one of the T-Birds make this weird epileptic sound. I can't even do it. It's like it makes me laugh every time. It's when he turns around and then one of the guys goes like fucking, I don't know what it is. I can't do it, but it's hilarious if I watch it. But
don't make it like that.
Classic soundtrack, fucking
man.
too good.
Actually, speaking of TVs, movies and stuff, I just wanted to see what you thought about the whole Stranger Things with Metallica, because there's this whole thing now that they're trying to cancel Metallica. Some followers and stuff like is trying to cancel
Why?
because of apparently like the dark history of Metallica and all their shenanigans, and like I don't know. I think it's brilliant. It's done the show good, and it's done Metallica good.
That is one of the most badass scenes in TV show. Like that's and I don't know. Like I'm gonna paraphrase a quote from comedian Bill Hicks, who's rest in peace to him. He died ages ago. But it was even mentioned. This what I'm about to say was mentioned in the Tool album Anathema at the very end, where the comedian says, "If you're against drugs, if you're against dark shit, throw out every classic album you have." It's true. Like you can't.
Yeah.
Every classic band has a dark history. I don't know why. It's just fucking why. It's how it is. They all do drugs. They all do fucked up shit. Apparently, Rick James has the darkest past ever. Apparently,
Yeah, right.
what I've heard, and he makes some of the best music. So it's
Exactly.
I don't know why it goes hand in hand, but no, Metallica, have fun trying to cancel them.
I know, yeah. Oh, let's cancel the biggest band ever. Like, good luck.
Like, if you can try, but you're not going to be able to. And plus they're like gazillionaires now. Like they give a fuck. Like they're probably happy to retire.
Yeah,
Cancel me.
yeah. I'd say James would be happy to retire now.
Yeah.
Please.
It's like, all right, please let me rest.
Yeah.
Cancel me. But it's funny. When Metallica were meant to tour in Australia a few years back, I remember because one of my co-mates, co-workers, he bought tickets, but they didn't come because apparently James Hetfield had to go to rehab. That was that whole situation, and I just remember thinking, I was talking to my co-worker about it, and I was like, here's probably how that conversation went down. Oh, we're going to Australia. Oh, what, weed's illegal? I need to go to rehab. That's probably how that went.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, number one, rest in peace to Olivia Newton-John. Number two, Metallica never gonna get cancelled. And number three, that Stranger Things scene was the best scene ever. So for next week's episode, we're gonna have our special guest, none other than the operator of Morgrot himself, John Sorrell, on to talk about his band. The band will be announced next week. He'll be here with us to talk about it. Obviously, we'll get links before that to listen to the album. And apparently, he wants to talk about more musical ventures that he has outside this album. So it'll be a cool, like, all-in-one thing about his music. And I'm sure, obviously, he'll be able to talk to us more detail about Morgrot and all that. So yeah, it'll be a fun feature to do. And that's coming up for our episode 31, because this is episode 30.
Happy birthday.
And just a cool little celebration to end the night off on. According to Buzzsprout, I got a message the other day. Apparently, we have hit officially, as of yesterday, 150 downloads.
No.
So it's a start. Thank you, everyone, for downloading. 150 people took time out to download it. And you know what I found funny? Because on the Buzzsprout app, you can check what countries downloaded it. Like, you can see. And we have downloads from Russia and Ukraine.
No way.
So people have stopped a war in the middle of a war just to download them. That's pretty sick. That's dedication.
That is dedication, man.
Oh, the Russians are invading. Nah, the new SAGAS is out.
Fucking hell.
So,
well, thank you, Ukraine.
Yeah, to everyone who's doing it, fuck yeah. Like, you guys are the best, and hopefully we'll get more and more from here. So until next time, as we always say, same time, same place, or something.
Or something. Peace.